Good morning, you three. You can see I'm in a very good mood because it's nearly the weekend and I've had a really fun week making lots of cool videos and getting to see all your work that you've been sending in, replying to your emails. So I'm feeling very positive today and I hope you are too. As usual, on Friday, because it's Friday, we're not going to be doing too much new learning. We're going to be making sure that everybody who has been following the lessons this week is up to date and knows all the topic that we have covered this week. So it's more about consolidation. And before I go through and show you some amazing pieces of work that I've seen this week, we just need to make sure that we complete our pre-lesson checklist. And then right at the end of today's lesson, there is going to be a little quiz, just like last week. So let's make sure we're ready for the lesson. Yeah, be a bit bigger there. There we go. Oh no, that's too big. Okay. So pre-lesson checklist. Have a pencil and paper ready. I'm sure you all know to do this now. Make sure that you are up to date with this week's video lesson. So if you have missed any lessons because you've been sick or because you've been really busy, don't worry. Now's your chance to go back and make sure you've watched them, because you're going to need that knowledge in order to complete today's quiz and in order to follow any of the corrections that we're doing today. And if you've unpaused the video and you're still watching, then write the date and LI for today, which is over here. It is the 1st of May 2020. I cannot believe it's May already, but time has flown. Year 3 reading and grammar, and the LI is to consolidate previous learning. So please pause the video and make sure you've got that written down before you carry on. Okay, so as I said, what I want to do first of all in today's video is to congratulate some people who have sent in some fantastic work. And I have to say I was really entertained, particularly by the work that came in this week that was related to direct speech. A lot of you did a really, really good job of transcribing the scenes that my brother and I acted out for you, which I know a lot of you enjoyed. And I also got to see some of your scenes of your own creation using direct speech from memories that you have or something that's happened in your day at your house. And those are really interesting. It was just really nice to see everyone using direct speech correctly, a lot of people using it correctly, and some very accurate to life representations of how people do speak to each other at home. So I've got 3 that I want to show you, and then I'm going to go through and we're going to talk about some corrections to do with direct speech and corrections to do with prefixes. So this is the first piece of work I wanted to show you. This is from Hussein in Nightingale class, I believe. And on this side you should see his transcription of the scenes with me and my brother Rishiv, and on this side his own scene. Now the thing he's done really well is he's done really clear, I hope you can see where I'm pointing my mouse now, really clear inverted commas, and he's done them accurately. You can see the shapes that he's made are really, really nice. And he's remembered a lot of the things that we needed to know about direct speech punctuation. So he's got a capital letter at the beginning of his speech clause, he's got a question mark here at the end of his speech clause, and sometimes he's even remembered that if there is no question mark or exclamation mark, it should be a comma at the end of the speech clause. He's made sure that he didn't forget to put his second set of inverted commas when the speech ends. Then he's got said, the reporting clause, and he's remembered that it should start with a lowercase letter. And then he said the person's name, and he's put a full stop at the end of each sentence, at the end of each reporting clause. Not only that, but he's also remembered that each different person's speech start on a new line. Remember, new line, new speaker. So this was a really, really excellent job of transcribing, and then you can see that in his own work, he's managed to apply the same skills. He's done some direct speech of his own. So well done, Hussein. I was really impressed with this piece of work, and I hope that you continue writing direct speech just as accurately as this. Okay, so this is the next person whose work I wanted to show, and this is from Mohammed in Secret class. The reason I wanted to comment on this, firstly, I really like the fact that Mohammed has left a line in between each line that he's written. It just makes it really clear in terms of his presentation for me to read. The one thing he's done is he's also tackled the challenge, which was to try and use words other than said when in the reporting clauses of each each part of the direct speech. So you can see he's used, I think that's supposed to be commanded, he's used replied, he's used cried. So he's got quite a few different words for said, which made it even more interesting for me to read. So well done, Mohammed. I really liked your creativity. And again, I hope you continue with this excellent version of direct speech. And finally, up here we have some excellent work from Sophie, also in CCOL class. And I have to commend Sophie because her presentation and her handwriting are always so lovely. We're using her joined up letters as much as she can, and making sure that her handwriting is very legible. So that's one fantastic thing. But in terms of the direct speech, Sophie has also done some lovely things. So this is her own scene. This is not the scene that was between me and my brother. So on one rainy day, my dad asked me, "Do you want to go to your friend's house?" "Yes," I said. Remember, she's done new speaker, new line, and she's done all of her direct speech in the right inverted commas. Let me carry on. "But before we go, we have to eat breakfast. What would you like to eat?" asked Dad. So we've got another example of a word for said. Instead of that, she's used asked. Then I like how she's interspersed narration with the speech. So then she wrote, "I was not sure what to eat, yogurt or cereal. I told my dad, 'Cereal, please.'" Now this is something quite challenging that Sophie's done. She's actually gone ahead onto some year 4 style writing where she has put the reporting clause first and then the speech clause. Now I haven't taught you guys that, so you're not expected to know this, but what I think is probably Sophie's seen in books how they punctuate direct speech when the reporting clause comes first and the speech clause comes second. And she's accurately identified how to punctuate it. So if you're curious, while you're reading your books, even in Evie in the Jungle, you can have a look at how direct speech is punctuated when it's in different formats, and you might be able to learn how to do what Sophie's doing if you analyse the text really carefully. So well done, Sophie, for challenging yourself to do something even more tricky and still remembering all the rules of direct speech that we have been covering this week. So I'm really pleased that so many of you were able to use the direct speech punctuation well and correctly. There were just 1 or 2 common errors that quite a few people made that I'm going to write up on the board, and we're just going to take a look at maybe why those people were missing things or getting confused, and hopefully help them to learn how to avoid those mistakes in the future. So in a second I'm going to step aside and I want you to have a look at the 3 versions of direct speech that are written up on the board. And I want you to think about what is the mistake in each of them. There is 1 mistake in each version, so have a look, and afterwards I'm going to show you the answers. I want you to have a think by yourself first. Okay, hopefully you've all had a look now. Oh, is it going to fall? So let's have a look at each one of these examples, and I'm going to use a red pen to correct the mistakes. So this one I saw in a few people's work. It says, "My name is Miss Panata," said Miss Panata, and there's something missing. In this version, what's happened is the person has correctly used the inverted commas, they've used a capital where a capital should be in the beginning of the speech clause, and they've used a lowercase where a lowercase should be at the beginning of the reporting clause. But they've forgotten that we always need punctuation at the end of the speech clause. They remembered their inverted commas, but they've forgotten that before the inverted commas, we need something to end the speech clause. What should that something be? It should be a comma. The reason it's a comma is because it's not a question and it's not an exclamation, it's just a statement. My name is Miss Panata. Therefore, we use a comma. The rule about commas is only for situations where you have the speech bit first and the reporting bit second, and that is all the examples that we've been working on this week. Now we've gone through this first example, maybe you'll be able to think, what is wrong with this sentence? It's the same words. "My name is Miss Panata," said Miss Panata. Now, if you can see, I'm not sure if you can see from on your video, but this speech clause has been ended with a full stop, and that's what a lot of you were doing in your work. But we need to remember that when a speech clause is followed by a reporting clause, we don't put a full stop, even though in a normal sentence we would put a full stop. In this situation, we have to put a comma. And that is exactly this. Now this is right because it looks exactly the same as the first one, which has been corrected. In this last example, the person has actually remembered that the speech clause, when it's followed by a reporting clause, should end in a comma. They've already put the comma in there, but they've forgotten something else. Can you see what it is? If you said that they've missed out the second set of inverted commas, you are correct. What they did is they put the opening set here, but when they got to the end of their speech clause, they got carried away and they just forgot to put the second set in, even though they remembered to do all the rest of the punctuation correctly. Now, this sentence is correct because it's got the inverted commas, it's got a capital at the beginning of the speech clause, it's got a lowercase at the beginning of the reporting clause, and it's got a comma at the end of the speech clause to show that it was not a question or an exclamation. Now you've had a look at some of the common errors people made with direct speech, we're just going to review some of the things that were confusing people when it came to prefixes. Most of you did understand prefixes pretty well, but a common mistake is that people were mixing up the meanings of the prefixes with words that are similar to the prefixes. So before I show you the exact mistake that was the number one culprit of the week, I would just like you to take a look at the meanings of each of the prefixes and remember them. So un means not, super means above or beyond, auto means self, inter means between, anti is against or opposite of, re is again, dis is not or opposite of, miss is wrong, sub is under or beneath, and in is not. Okay, so let's have a look at this question. So some of you will remember this alien prefix work that we did on Monday. So what you had to do is you had to look at the word, which is here, and you had to figure out what it could mean by breaking it down into the two parts, the prefix and the root word, and then adding the meanings together. Now the mistake that a lot of people made, for example with this question, is that they found out the root word meaning. So they looked at this, that was correct, and they identified that that collection of symbols in alien language means marry. So they knew that it was something to do with marry. But in terms of what had to be added from the prefix, a lot of people wrote automatically marry. Now, it's quite clear why some people made that mistake, because the prefix auto is in the word automatically. So you might think that auto means automatically. But if you remember your prefix knowledge, we know that auto does not mean automatically. Auto means self. Oops, not slef, self. So you can't add the meaning automatically onto marry. The meaning that you actually had to add was self to marry. So in the future, remember to look at the prefix and think about the meaning that you know it is, which is on the list that I've given you, instead of associating the prefix with another word that sounds like it. Okay? Automatically does sound like auto, but it does not mean the same thing, so we cannot just use them interchangeably. So the correct answer would have been self-marry. The last thing that I wanted to talk about was about this prefix, in. This is the shape-shifting prefix that a lot of people got confused about, and they said they found it super tricky. I'm going to simplify it for you, just to show you the information that you really need to know. Okay? The only thing you need to know about this prefix in, there's only two things you need to know. One is that the meaning of this prefix is not. Okay? And the other is that this prefix, in, can change shapes. It can change to il, it can change to im, and it can change to ear. I don't want you to worry yourself too much about why or when it changes to these different forms, but I want you to make sure you know the connection. So you know that il connects to in, im connects to in, and ear connects to in. That means every time you see the prefix il, you should think, oh, that comes from in, which means not. Every time you see the prefix im, you should think, oh, that comes from in, which means not. And the same, every time you see the prefix ear, that comes from in, which means not. So you just need to remember that these relate together, and you need to remember the meaning. Remember, that's the most important thing about prefixes, is you remember what type of meaning each of them adds to the words that they attach to. If you need to write this down or copy this picture, pause the video. I think it will be useful for you when you're doing the quiz later. Okay, everybody, that's enough corrections, and it's now time for the quiz. So make sure you have a pencil and paper ready. I'll do one example with you, and then I will let you have some time to finish the quiz by yourself. So for the quiz, each question looks like this. You will have in one colour at the top the question part, and then underneath you will have some different options for your answer. Have a look carefully at each of the options when you're answering the question. For some questions there will only be one correct answer, but for other questions there might be more than one that is correct. I'm going to show you now how you can lay out your answers. So let's take a look at this question. It says, direct speech is when you write down, and then it's got 4 options. A summary of what someone said, exactly what someone said, what someone did. From my own knowledge, I know that direct speech is when you write down exactly what someone said. So it's that second option there. And when I write it on my piece of paper, I'm just going to write the question number and my answer. If you have the worksheet printed out, you can just circle the correct answer. But what you definitely don't need to do is write full sentences because it will take you very long. So just write the question number and write down your answer. So this first set of questions are just for the JADE group only. So if you're not in JADE, you can skip past this section or just wait until your questions arrive. So JADE group. Question 1 is, which of the following symbols shows direct speech? That's question 1, so choose one of the symbols. Question 2, what is the meaning of the prefix un? Is it not, wrong, opposite of, or inside? Question 3, what is the root word of unlucky? Is it unlucky, lucky, or there isn't one? Question 4, where does a prefix get attached to? Is it inside a word, at the end of a word, on top of a word, or at the beginning of a word? Question 5, what is the meaning of the prefix sub? Is it opposite of, under, below, beyond and above, or wrong? If you need to pause the video to finish answering any of your questions or rewind, feel free to do that. And then when you're finished, you don't need to carry on with the rest of the video if you're in JADE group. You can just ask a parent or guardian to take a picture of your work and carry on with the rest of your lessons for the day. If you're still watching, that means you're in the indigo group or you're not in any colour group, which means you need to do these questions. Remember that you can pause at any moment, so I suggest that you pause after each question and write down your answer, and you can always rewind in case you miss something. Question 1. What is the root word in autoimmune? Is it auto, automatic, immune, or there isn't one? Question 2. Are you allowed to use single speech marks, like this? If you have a look at the picture, you should see it, as well as double speech marks, like this, to show direct speech? Yes or no? Question 3. What is the meaning of the prefix miss? Is it not, wrong, opposite of, or under? Question 4. Which of the following is a type of punctuation used to show direct speech? Commas, speech clause, reporting clause, or inverted commas? Question 5. Where does a prefix get attached to? Inside a word, at the end of a word, on top of a word, or at the beginning of a word? If you're still listening, you should have written down all your answers to these questions. Indigo group, you are now finished with today's lesson and quiz, so you can stop the video now and carry on with the rest of your day's lessons. If you're not in the Indigo group, you need to carry on because there's a few more bonus challenging questions for you to complete before the end of the lesson. Question 6. What types of punctuation are allowed at the end of a speech clause when it is immediately followed by a reporting clause? Are you allowed a question mark, a comma, a full stop, or an exclamation mark? Question 7. Which of the following is not a form of the prefix in? Is it is, ear, im, or ill? Question 8. Is a prefix a short word? Yes or no? And then the super tricky one, question 9. Which of the following words does not contain a prefix? Superficial, miss, disqualify, or review? Please send in your work to this Year 3 email address for me to mark. Okay, thank you, bye, have a good weekend.